Our business journal today is on the supply chain in ASEAN by Kun Sathapat Pathong.
Flood crisis in Thailand last year is now recognized as the worst flood crisis in over 5 decades, causing damages and supply chain disruptions, particularly to the business sector in Thailand. Regarding this matter, and on the occasion of 73rd anniversary of the establishment of the Faculty of Commerce and Accountancy, Thammasat University has organized a seminar focusing on flood impacts on the business sector in Thailand and the possible solutions for the country. As hundreds of factories are under flood water that swept across the country since late July last year. The production of cars, electronics, and other goods has been halted in central areas of Thailand. According to reports, 5 industrial estates in the badly affected province of Ayutthaya have been flooded. The flood crisis has caused over 30% decrease to automotive and electronic industries and more than 16% decrease to other industries. The agriculture sector has also been hit, with 10% of Thailand's rice paddy damaged by the flood. Reports said, as dozens of major factories have been flooded, manufacturing supply chains inside and outside of the country have been disrupted. Other ASEAN member states like Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, and the Philippines have also faced supply chain disruptions, as these countries had also been facing the same plight as Thailand. Therefore, supply chain disruption is not the matter for one particular country, but it is considered as the regional matter. To tackle the unprecedented situations in the future that could lead to supply chain disruptions both domestically and regionally, academic from Thammasat University Ruth Panomyong pointed out that the redesign of supply chain is needed by adopting fragmentation, which will be enabled by ASEAN Economic Community.
I think one thing that we need to understand is that when we look at production system, in the past most of the production system was mainly focused in a geographical area that is quite concentrated. But with this concept of fragmentation, it's about exploiting the comparative advantage of the other locations that may exist in other countries, but there are some conditions attached to fragmentation. One of the key conditions for fragmentation is that you need to have efficient and robust, what we call logistics service linkages. If you do not have these logistics service linkages, then fragmentation will not be possible. So when we try to explain fragmentation, what we need to say is that it is not a natural state. It depends on a number of conditions. But with the establishment of the ASEAN Economic Community, what is happening is that AEC is creating that environment that will enable fragmentation. And this is what we see, especially from multinational enterprises, when they look at ASEAN and think about, I want to invest in ASEAN. They don't look at focusing on just one country, but looking at ASEAN as a whole and saying, I want my suppliers to be in Cambodia, I want my main factory to be in Thailand, and my regional headquarters to be in Singapore.
However, one of the key players is government sector, who plays a significant role to handle any situation that might affect its people. Mismanagement of the government could worsen the situation, as it happened in Thailand. Professor Ruth said how the government uses data and integration among concerned state agencies should really be taken into account.
Okay, I think one of the key points from a government perspective is they really failed in terms of their information flow. What I'm saying here is that, in fact, there's a lot of data, there's a lot of information, both within the government and outside the government. But from every decision that we have seen, it doesn't show that they have used such information adequately. From a Thai government perspective, moving towards a way on how to reduce this type of risk or this type of disaster, I think the first part really relates to how they use the information, but then after that also in terms of the institution, the various line agencies, the various ministries, how do they collaborate? Because it's a very functionalized system. It's not really integrated, and at the end of the day, it's not able to address the problem of those that have been affected by the flood. So that's why it's a complete breakdown of the government system, the government service, in terms of being able to respond to the need of the population. So probably a rethink of the whole governmental system is needed.
He added that the government should learn to trust the business sector and how the business sector is able to deal with adversity.
He gave some suggestions to the government that it should have disaster predictability model and come up with master plans for disaster. For short-term measures, he said, the government should facilitate firms to move some production bases from affected areas to other strategic locations, like some provinces in the eastern part of the country, which he said may contribute to prevent leakage of industries from Thailand to other countries. Moreover, he suggested business sector that it should not only write plans, but also practice the plans in order to pick up the most appropriate one when an unpredictable situation comes.
For the business sector, from what we have seen that has happened, is really all about what we call business continuity management, or BCM, where now companies have to think about how they can continue the business. Maybe in the past it was just a question of writing a plan. Now it's really about practicing the plan if something happens. In fact, a lot of businesses have had a lot of experiences in business continuity management, but it was mostly because of the political issues in Thailand. This is really the first time it's a natural disaster. So when we think in terms of disaster, don't just think in terms of man-made disaster, but also think in terms of natural disaster, so that all the various scenarios can be taken into account, and then they can have the most appropriate response for any type of events.
สถาปัตย์แพทอง reporting for ASEAN TV